Hi, my name is Carrie. This film is to tell you my struggle with homelessness and how the steps I followed got me to where I am now. To begin with, I was living with my mum, working in a club on the weekend and working with a company doing door-to-door selling. Everything was fine. My mum used to visit her boyfriend on a weekend in Swindon. He was a good guy, in the army for 28 years, couldn't complain, and she was really happy. So we were all happy for her. Eventually, my mum had decided that she wanted to go and live with him, so she gave us all a month to find a place to live. So what I did then was I asked a load of friends, and one of my friends told me about a couple of their mates that were looking for a flatmate. So I moved in there. It was fine for a couple of weeks, but then I realised how disgustingly filthy the flatmates were. There would be like mouldy food everywhere and dirty underwear just lying around, which was a bit of a piss take. So eventually I was getting really fed up, so my dad started asking around. As he was living in a hostel himself, he couldn't exactly put me up. In the end, a friend of the family offered to put me up. She had a spare room and all I had to do was pay her £200 a month. Food and bills included, couldn't really complain. So I had a different job at the time as well. I was working full-time at Savvy, so I was easily able to afford it, and so I moved in. I knew before that this woman was a bit erratic, but I was not prepared for what was in store for the next couple of months. It started with her blasting music at early hours of the morning, which I just dealt with. Then it was like her coming home really drunk at early hours in the morning. And then eventually I woke up one day and I had a day off work, so I was just relaxing watching TV. And then her son and his girlfriend came in screaming and shouting. Then he started whacking her, and then suddenly he picked up a knife and stabbed himself in the neck. It wasn't a deep cut, so he was pretty lucky he didn't cause any harm to himself. Well, by this point, I was getting in a lot of trouble at work as well, as I wasn't sleeping very well and kept oversleeping in the morning, and so I ended up on a final warning. So I told the woman that I was living with that I really need a good night's sleep, as I had to be up at 6 in the morning. Well, that night, I went to bed early, and the next thing I heard was a load of banging and shouting. So I went downstairs to find out what was going on, and it turned out her other son had flipped out and started headbutting walls and boxer punching himself. His head swelled up massively, and so we called the ambulance. Well, the ambulance turned up and, well, they had to refuse to take him as he was a danger to the staff. So they just called the police to help, and then they couldn't take him either as he was a danger to himself. In the end, we had to concentrate on calming him down, so we just all restrained him and started talking him down. And eventually it did work, but by this time, it had been like 5 in the morning. Or when I woke up, it was like 11 in the morning, and I knew that was it from my work. So I went to a friend and told her what was happening, and she got, well, slightly concerned to say the least. So she said to me to just come stay with her for a bit. So I packed my stuff and moved in a couple of days later. Well, one day she went out for the night and, well, my boyfriend came round. Now, I know it's wrong, but we did think the house was empty, so we decided to have a little bit of fun. What we didn't realise was my friend's mum was in, and she'd heard us. So the next day, I get a phone call from my friend telling me her mum wasn't letting me back to the house. Well, there began the start of my sofa hopping. I was here, there and everywhere, walking sometimes like 6 miles a day, and I'd lost a hell of a lot of weight. Got down to about 6.5 stone. In the end, I eventually got a placement in a hostel in Bedminster. It wasn't very nice. It was full of like alcoholics, drug addicts, and so I kept myself to myself. After 2 months, I got a phone call from 1625 independent people, and they had a room in a shared house available in Eastham. I had no choice. I had to accept it, as if I didn't, I'd be chucked out the hostel. I would spend the next year and a half in this shared house, and I did have quite a few problems, to say the least. I got shot at like 1:30 in the afternoon, and I used to get followed home every night, and I'd just walk out my house and get asked if I was a prostitute. It's ridiculous. Eventually, they did shut the house down, so I was pretty relieved, and they moved me to a shared house in Barton Hill. And then eventually I got my own place. So that's my story.